Texas is 2 wins away from winning a national championship, but could they already be losing Steve Sarkisian? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We'll get you caught up with the latest of Texas, the lone SEC team preparing for the semifinal against Ohio State, what the players and coaches are saying, and this rumor about Steve Sarkisian, potential NFL rumblings. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. In today's episode, brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. All right, we got plenty to discuss. We'll get to transfer portal news coming up in a little bit. Also, later in the show, we'll recap the SEC weekend in college basketball. That was a lot of fun. But let's start with the Texas Longhorns first off, and what a weekend it was for, week it was for the Texas Longhorns, obviously beating Arizona State and advancing to the semis. They will play in the Cotton Bowl this coming Friday night against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And the Longhorns, they were in full pads on Sunday in preparation for their college football playoff semi matchup. Good news for Texas fans. Cameron Williams was reportedly out there taking first string reps at right tackle. If you recall, he was knocked out of the first round game in versus Clemson and did not play in the Peach Bowl last week against Arizona State. Also, wide receiver Isaiah Bond was running with the first string group of wide receivers, looked fully healthy, and normal group of running backs looked to be good, according to reports. Steve Sarkisian saying a couple days ago he expects to be at full strength for the matchup with the Buckeyes, as a spot in the national championship game is on the line. Now, asked about this matchup, Steve Sarkisian, he called Ohio State the best team in college football, and so the Longhorns are going to need their best performance yet. Sark also calling out the Longhorn faithful, saying, look, we need Longhorn Nation to show up and show out in Arlington. We're going to need everything we got to try to win this game. Clearly, we are massive underdogs. Nobody's going to give us a shot. This is the best team in college football, and we're going to have to make sure that we put our best foot forward to give ourselves a chance to win the game. Sark did single out Ohio State's weapons on offense, particularly their receivers, Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, said they are both big physical players. They have length, they have speed, they have playmaking ability on the ball. They have really big catch radiuses. They've got the scheme to go with it. And with Coach Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, they've got a quarterback who delivers the ball. So you add all that up, and these guys are impactful players. Both teams are familiar with each other, by the way. Texas's Quinn Ewers spent his freshman year at Ohio State before transferring back to Austin, and Will Howard faced the Longhorns with Kansas State before transferring to Ohio State. Now, Sark also talked about being the last remaining SEC team in the playoff in the first year in the league. He said it's something they take pride in. He said, I really believe this is a premier football conference in America because of the week-in, week-out tasks that it requires physically and mentally. I know, unfortunately, for Georgia, they lost their starting QB in the SEC title game, and I'm sure other teams in our conference had to endure things that could take a toll on your team. It's no excuse, but at the end of the day, we have to find a way to navigate our way through it. But to be here on the stage, be back in the Final Four, wearing that SEC patch in our jersey, we're going to do our best to represent it because this is a heck of a conference. Now, some of the players speaking with the media yesterday, Alfred Collins, he talked about being a underdog. He said, really don't pay attention to what people say. We know what we're doing in our building. When the time comes, we'll be able to showcase that to the world. Andrew Makuba, also talking with the media, said, look, if they got us as an underdog, that's fine. If they don't, that's also fine. But Makuba went on to say, I know Texas fans never disappoint. I know Texas fans are going to show up and show out every time and bring that energy in this game. Michael Taff, defensive back, was asked about getting to play at AT&T Stadium. He said, I go by the motto of big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. Whenever you're in AT&T Stadium, there's always it's always a big-time game. It is a 3-hour drive from Texas's campus up there to Arlington, so expect a lot of Texas fans to make that trip, and should be heavy Texas representation there at AT&T Stadium, aka Jerry's World. Now, Ohio State fans, they travel well, and obviously they haven't had a whole lot of postseason success in the last couple years to trek and have a lot of excitement about. One game away from national championship. You got to think they're going to bring a good contingent over to Dallas, but obviously Texas should have a great representation. Texas sitting on FanDuel as a 5.5-point underdog. One more note here: Jahdae Barron talked about kicker Bert Auburn, who obviously missed 2 kicks late in that game last week. He said, "Look, Bertie's made a lot of amazing kicks for us in the past. He's going to come up big when we need him. If he could just block out the noise, he knows we're riding with him, and we got his back." That's what the culture is here. No matter the ups and downs, we're always going to pick someone up. So we'll continue to preview this matchup throughout this week, and should be a really, really big one coming up Friday night. And we'll have full coverage for you right here on Locked On SEC. All right, one other note here on Steve Sarkisian. He is maybe starting to garner a little interest from some NFL franchises, according to reports. Adam Schefter, putting out a report Sunday morning, spoke about the possibility of Sarkisian making the jump back to the NFL. He said, "Look, I would expect some teams to call in and inquire about Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian, who is drawing some interest from the NFL level." If you remember, Sark worked for the Raiders as quarterbacks coach back in 2004, and then he returned to the NFL as quarterbacks coach of the Falcons in 2017 and 2018, and then became offensive coordinator 2019 and 20. No college coach has been hired since the Urban Meyer debacle down in Jacksonville. Other coaches whose names have popped up of interest, of course, Deion Sanders, his name popped up last year, popping up again this year, and Notre Dame coach Marcus Freeman drawing some interest as well. But Sark already becoming Texas's best head coach since Mac Brown led the Longhorns now to back-to-back college football playoff appearances and a spot in the national championship game on the line. If Sark were to leave for the NFL, it'd be a big blow for Texas. Where would they go? Who would they hire? I mean, it's like, all the elite coaches are kind of, a lot of them have retired. And so it's like, who would be the obvious person you would target if that were to happen? Again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Sark's very happy there. He's creating something really nice there at Texas. But, look, just for the hell of it, FanSided, they already posted a piece on 5 potential destinations that Arch Manning could transfer to if Sark were to indeed leave Texas for the NFL. They list Miami number 5, Michigan number 4, Ole Miss 3, Alabama 2, and Georgia number 1. So take that for what you will, but just people having a little fun with that. And it's funny. There was some rumblings where Sark is going to play this game that maybe the Dallas Cowboys could move on from Mike McCarthy and bring in Sark to be the guy. Again, this is all just kind of what you would call offseason fodder. But when Adam Schefter reports where there's smoke, at least it's worth passing along to you guys that there might be something there. All right, a couple other newsy tidbits here. Over at Alabama, Kalen DeBoer making a major change to his coaching staff after just 1 year. Co-defensive coordinator and DB's coach Colin Hitchler is getting the axe with a year remaining on his contract. Pete Thamel reporting the news on Friday. Hitchler and co-DC Maurice Linguist shared the coaching duties for the defensive backfield this year. Joined the staff after previously serving on Wisconsin staff under Luke Fickell. Now, Hitchler was with Fickell at Cincinnati prior, and he was at South Alabama before that. Kane Womack was South Alabama's defensive coordinator back then. But Alabama finished DeBoer's opening season 9-4, and look, some heads had to roll. Alabama DB Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. took to social media and said, "My safety coach just got fired. Thank you, Lord." So, sounded like some of the players weren't the biggest fans of Colin Hitchler there, coaching Alabama's secondary. Of course, Kirkpatrick is the son of the former Alabama All-American, Dre Kirkpatrick, who played for Nick Saban. One other note here on Alabama's staff: Chuck Morrell is now listed as Alabama's linebackers coach. He fills that on-field defensive staff opening created by Hitchler's firing. Hitchler is still listed on the team website, but Morrell coached alongside DeBoer since 2020, was a safeties coach at Fresno State, then joined him in Washington as co-defense coordinator and safeties coach. So sounds like Morrell will, like I said, be Alabama's linebackers coach and fill that void of Hitchler. So you'll have Kane Womack as the DC, Freddie Roach, D-line coach / associate head coach, Maurice Linguist, co-DC and DB's coach, Christian Robinson, outside linebackers coach, and now Chuck Morrell coaching, I guess, the inside backers. One more note here over at Georgia. Heartbreaking news for Kirby Smart. Obviously, the trip to New Orleans and everything that transpired with the terrorist attack on New Year's, having to push the game back a day, and then they lose the game in the fashion they did. Apparently, there was news that came out that Kirby Smart's dad, Sonny Smart, had a fall while they were in New Orleans and had hip surgery and passed away from complications from the hip surgery. The University of Georgia put out a statement, said they expressed their deepest sympathy to the Smart family following the passing of Sonny Smart. Greg Sankey also shared a statement, referred to the widespread impact that Kirby's dad had on many people, and just loss for the Georgia community. And you can't imagine the week that Kirby had, from going to New Orleans, again, having to prep for a playoff game with your backup quarterback. You lose starting quarterback in the SEC championship game. You go to New Orleans. The game gets delayed by a full day with a terror attack. Your dad has a fall, has emergency hip surgery, and then passes away from complications from it. Just absolutely awful week. And, said thoughts and prayers out to Kirby Smart. Rough week for him. All right. Still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. When we return, we'll get you caught up with the latest in the transfer portal and some news on Alabama guys returning. That's coming your way next. First, I want to remind you guys, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app going to give you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website, FanDuel.com. And, of course, the big line we're keeping an eye on, Ohio State -5.5 against Texas on Friday night. If you feel like Texas can pull off the upset, you could take them plus 190 money line, or plus the 5.5 points if you like them catching 5.5 points. Just go visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get signed up, and you will get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com, and go make the NFL playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And we had a good bit of movement here these last couple of days in the transfer portal across the SEC. But first, I want to jump into some guys who are making a return back to Alabama. And we'll start with the Crimson Tide as we, like I said, got some announcements. The guys coming back. How about linebacker Deontae Lawson? Had plenty of options on the table. The star linebacker announcing he is not done yet on Saturday, announcing he is returning to Tuscaloosa for the 2025 season. The return of Lawson, a big boost for Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack, and that defense be one of the most productive returners. Produced the second most tackles for Alabama last year with 76. In his message, he said, University of Alabama has been home for the last 4 years. Cannot imagine a better place to learn, work toward my master's degree. The opportunity I was given to play for Coach Nick Saban and Coach DeBoer is a blessing. And I want to finish what I started on the day I stepped on campus, and that includes winning a national championship. So Lawson, 194 career tackles for Alabama, big-time contributor, and finished second in tackles to Jahad Campbell. He's off to the NFL. Some other guys also leaving. Jahad Campbell's off to the NFL, but with Deontae Lawson coming back, fellow linebacker Justin Jefferson and defensive lineman Tim Keenan announcing they will be back for another season with the Tide. Jefferson finished fourth on the team this past season with 60 tackles, while Keenan had 40 tackles to go with 8 tackles for a loss. Now, Jefferson is a beneficiary of that Diego Pavia JUCO decision. It's the new NCAA waiver stating that current JUCO transfers get another year of eligibility. He put a post on social media, without this legislation, I would not be able to continue playing the game I love at the university I love. Alabama's a special place for me. Cannot wait to return. Keenan, by the way, completed his redshirt senior season, year 4 of his college football career. The last 2 seasons, he earned a starting spot on that D-line. This past year, had 40 tackles, 7.5 tackles for a loss, and 2.5 sacks. Now, it wasn't all good news for Kalen DeBoer and company. We know Jalen Milroe announced a couple days ago he is headed pro. So you're losing him. But how about on the offensive line? Alabama is going to have to replace their starting right tackle. According to reports, Elijah Pritchett is entering the portal. 6'6", 330 pounds, from the state of Georgia. Started all 13 games for the Tide this year. And the sophomore apparently wasn't thrilled with the situation. And he's going to move on. Rotated into all 14 games as a redshirt freshman at right and left tackle back in 2023. Former 5-star O-lineman, and becomes the 22nd Alabama player to enter the portal during this cycle. So obviously Crimson Tide players had until yesterday to enter the transfer portal. You get 5 days after your bowl game ends. But also Alabama tight end Ty Lockwood, a former 4-star prospect and a top 12 tight end in 2023. He also entered the portal. Got some other guys who've done so as well. Edge Jeremiah Alexander, Ja'Shawn Ross, safety King Mack, wide receivers Jaron Hamilton and Amari Jefferson. Justice Haynes, we know, went up to Michigan. Devon Payne did as well. So a lot of movement happening over there at Alabama. Going to look like a very different team next year. And I'm sure Alabama fans hoping they look very different with more wins next year. But over Georgia, they are losing Jaden Rashada, set to transfer from Georgia after 1 season with the Bulldogs. That from Pete Thamel yesterday. Rashada, of course, was the big 4-star recruit that initially signed with Florida in 2023, then asked to be released from his letter of intent after the NIL deal fell through, transferred to Arizona State, spent his freshman year there, and then transferred to Georgia this past season. So he'll be on to his 3rd program in 3 years. And that's not even including the initial signing with Florida. But did not take any snaps for Georgia this season. Served as depth behind Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton. And I'm sure with Stockton coming in and, starting the playoff game and being, all sides pointing to him being the guy next year, looks like Rashada is going to move on. He will have 3 years of eligibility remaining as next destination. Now, some good news for Georgia. USC transfers Zachariah and Zion Branch from USC have committed to Georgia. Zachariah is a wide receiver. He was ranked as a 5-star recruit in 2023. Zion was a 4-star safety in that class. They will both have a couple of years of eligibility remaining. Zachariah Branch telling ESPN, I chose Georgia because I felt like the culture was something special. They have a great coaching staff. And it looks like he's going to try to boost that Georgia wide receiver room. Georgia led the country this year with 36 wide receiver drops, and he accounted for 1,800 all-purpose yards during his 2 seasons at USC. Also had 2 kicks returned for touchdowns in 2023. Zion Branch, he played in all 12 games for USC as a redshirt sophomore safety this season at 19 tackles, 3 pass breakups, and a sack in a reserve role. But 2 nice pickups there for Georgia, a nice package deal with both of those guys. One other Georgia note, a wide receiver return man, Anthony Evans, planning to enter the transfer portal. Over at South Carolina, they will lose quarterback Robbie Ashford, the former Auburn and South Carolina quarterback, sharing news on Sunday morning that he is transferring to Wake Forest. So we knew he was in the portal already, but the former SEC quarterback cited the ability to go play for Jake Dickert, who previously guided Cam Ward and John Mateer 2 good seasons at Washington State. Dickert took the Wake Forest job earlier this offseason after Dave Clawson decided to step down. So Robbie Ashford headed to Wake Forest to see what he does there. Spent just 1 season at South Carolina, and obviously Lenora Sellers in line to be the starter there for the foreseeable future at South Carolina. Over at Texas A&M, they made a big pickup to their DB room, signing former Washington cornerback Jordan Shaw. He had 4 tackles for a loss, 6 pass deflections this season for the Huskies. comes to College Station with 3 years of eligibility remaining. Also reports they're picking up Iowa State transfer D lineman Tyler Onyedim, Onyedim, 6'4", 295 pounds, total 90 tackles, 11 half tackles for a loss and 3 sacks in his time with the Cyclones. He'll have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Over at Missouri, they earned a commitment from a very experienced safety, Jalen Catalon from UNLV. Now, if you remember Jalen Catalon, he began his collegiate career at Arkansas. Then, after a couple of years at Arkansas, transferred to Texas, spent the 2023 season with Texas in their final season in the Big 12. Then this past year, decided to go to UNLV. He initially signed with the Razorbacks as a 4-star recruit back in 2019. So 2025 will be Jalen Catalon's 7th season of college football because he redshirted in 2019, then got the COVID waiver in 2020, and has dealt with injuries. So, look, we had Jalen Catalon on Locked On SEC a couple of years ago. We might have to follow back up with him and get him on and talk about going to join a Missouri team that's hoping to continue to grow under Eli Drinkwitz, who just put together back-to-back double-digit win seasons. And he's ranked as the 15th transfer to commit to Mizzou so far this offseason, a class that ranks number 10 nationally in the 24/7 composite. Of course, Catalan will have 1 season of eligibility remaining, unless he gets any more time added to it. But Mizzou also, they will lose a freshman corner to the transfer portal, Jaron Sensabaugh, former 4-star recruit in the class of 2024, announcing he's entering the portal. And one other note, Washington State starting DB Stephen Hall has reportedly committed to Mizzou. 6'1", 195-pound DB, 4 passes defense, 1 interception, and a touchdown return in his 2 seasons with the Cougars. According to reports, he'll have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Over at Tennessee, they are losing a couple of pieces. Florida State taking advantage, picking up some former Tennessee guys. First, they're adding ex-Tennessee defensive lineman Jason Jenkins. That's according to 24/7 Sports. He recorded 4 tackles for a loss and 2 sacks this season while playing in the mix on that Tennessee defensive line. Also, they're adding Tennessee wide receiver Squirrel White. White visited the Seminoles a couple of days ago, and the 5'10", 167-pound wide receiver is going to go play for Gus Malzahn, the new OC there at Florida State. He will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Entered the portal just 2 weeks ago. He was also considering North Carolina and Oregon, but Squirrel White going to go play for Florida State. Now, Chaz Nimrod, former Tennessee wide receiver, he is signed with USF. He's heading to South Florida. But Florida State adding Tennessee D lineman Jason Jenkins and Tennessee wide receiver Squirrel White. There was some good news on Friday. If you guys missed it, Tennessee 5-star true freshman wide receiver Mike Matthews had entered the portal. According to reports, he is going to stay with the Volunteers. So whatever he was looking for there, NIL deal, whatever, he is going to stay put. A few other notes here. Ole Miss wide receiver Aiden Williams is entering the portal after 2 seasons with the Rebels. Played 11 games as a true freshman, but didn't see much involvement in the offense. In 2024, he had 3 catches for 39 yards. So he is on the move. Wide receiver room going to look very different for Ole Miss next year. Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins declare for the draft. Waiting to see what Juice Wells will do. But Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest, Caleb Oden from Alabama, Dejon Stribling from Oklahoma State are all coming in through the portal. And then also they're bringing in Caleb Cunningham, the number 3 wide receiver in the class of 2025. So different group next year. Over at Arkansas, tight end Varquise Gums is transferring. Spent a pair of seasons at North Texas before coming to Arkansas. Now he will head to UNLV. So he'll have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Also, former LSU and Maryland offensive tackle Marcus Dumerville has committed to Arkansas. 6'5", 310 pounds, will have 1 year of eligibility remaining, played in 10 games this season for the Terps. Over at LSU, Zy Alexander, starting DB, officially declared for the draft. That was expected. Also, LSU D lineman Jalen Lee planning to enter the transfer portal. LSU safety D lineman JVR Suggs committed to Wisconsin. LSU transfer quarterback AJ Swan committed to Appalachian State. And D lineman Kimo Makaneoli planning to enter the portal there as well. At Kentucky, they added a big offensive line, or rather D lineman, David Gusta from Washington State, 6'3", 315 pounds, was the top available D lineman. We had the number 2 D lineman in the portal, according to On3. Recorded 62 tackles, 1.5 sacks. So good pickup there from Mark Stoops and company. Over at Florida, transfer wide receiver Andy Jean has signed with Pitt. And they're also going to be picking up former Alabama State and UAB safety Adrian Maddox, committed to Florida yesterday. 6'3", 200-pound safety, racked up over 114 tackles, will have 1 season of eligibility remaining. And then lastly, trying to get all these notes in here, Oklahoma transfer linebacker Lewis Carter has committed to UCF, and Oklahoma safety Michael Patterson McDonald has entered the portal. So there you have it. You guys all caught up with the portal news happening over the weekend. Still a ton of names, because remember, keep in mind, when you play your bowl game, you still have 5 days after to enter the portal. And then even once you're in the portal, that's just the window to get in the portal. After that, you still have time to announce where you want to transfer. So we'll keep you updated with all the latest hot and heavy transfer portal tidbits over the next couple of weeks. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC. We'll touch very quickly on some SEC hoops news when we return right here on Locked On SEC. Always fun to remind you guys about our friends over at the Game Time app. Look, if you are planning to attend the college football playoff games, bring an incredible experience that will bring fans together like never before, you can go experience the fun and make new memories with this new format. Of course, you got the SEC game, the lone SEC game. So talking to those Texas fans out there, if you want to get to see the Texas Longhorns in action, you can go do so up there in Dallas and take advantage. Get some tickets on the Game Time app. Game Time, they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to only show you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Go take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Download Game Time today, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, if you've never used them before, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. It is last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, rolling along here, Locked On SEC, and man, it was a fun weekend of college hoops, a fun Saturday for those of you who watched it. My gosh, Kentucky and Florida tipped off at 10 a.m. Central. So for those East Coast Central Time Zone, whatever, if you were watching, I mean, we literally had SEC hoops action all day long on the family of networks of ESPN, ESPN2, and all that. But did want to just kind of run through a quick recap of what we saw over the weekend. And first off, Mark Stoops, man, I'm sorry, wrong one. The other Mark Pope, in his first season at the helm at Kentucky, could have imagined a much better start and doing something that no Kentucky coach has done since Adolph Rupp. Pope becomes the first Kentucky coach since Rupp to start 3-0 against top 10 teams. They scored their third such win on Saturday, knocking off number 6 Florida in Lexington 106-100. Wildcats' first win over a top 10 team this season was against Duke back in November, and then they beat number 7 Gonzaga in December. And Mark Pope off to a 12-2 start in his first season as a head coach, replacing John Calipari. And no Kentucky fans are super excited. Maybe I remember some weren't super excited when they first announced Mark Pope as the replacement, but they have certainly come around on him, and he has been done very impressive things so far. How about Alabama? Speaking of impressive, they met Oklahoma, first game of SEC action on Saturday, and Nate Oates and the Tide built up a 19-point lead at halftime and never looked back. Oklahoma was never able to make a serious dent into the deficit, and Alabama won 107-79, making a statement at home. The key stat in this one, rebounding. Alabama out-rebounded Oklahoma 51-26. The Tide nearly has as many offensive rebounds as Oklahoma's total rebounds. Mark Sears led the way with 22 points. Alabama will hit the road back-to-back games with a midweek trip to South Carolina, followed by next Saturday night primetime game against Texas A&M. Oklahoma, they will return home for a midweek game against Texas A&M. Speaking of the Aggies, they crushed their rival, the Texas Longhorns, on Saturday night, 80-60, in a big-time game there in College Station. The Lone Star Showdown continues, of course, in the Texas versus Texas A&M rivalry across all sports. And Buzz Williams and the Aggies now 12-2 in the season. Already a couple of quad one victories on the season. Zurich Phelps led the way for A&M with 18 points, 6 of 8 shooting. A&M won by 20 points, despite going 2 of 19 from three-point range. The Aggies won big, dominating. They'll be back in action Wednesday against Oklahoma in Norman. How about Tennessee, the last undefeated team in all of Division I? The Vols won Saturday in their SEC opener against Arkansas, and they are a perfect 14-0 to start the season. Oklahoma and Florida were both previously undefeated, but they took L's on Saturday. According to SEC Network, it's the first time Tennessee has been the last remaining unbeaten men's basketball team since 1916. Their SEC gauntlet will continue Tuesday when they go on the road to face Florida. Should be a fun one down in Gainesville. Other games from the weekend, Vandy got an impressive road win over LSU, 80-72. Vandy's now 13-1. Number 2, Auburn absolutely crushed Mizzou at home, 84-68. Shanae Broom, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 4 blocks. He continues to be one of my favorite players in the SEC this year. Number 17, Mississippi State, very impressive, 13-1. They crushed South Carolina in Starkville, 85-50. And Mississippi State, fun to watch. Chris Jan's company. And then number 24, Ole Miss. They got a 63-51 win over Georgia, and the Rebels are now 12-2 on the season. So, look, we don't spend a ton of time talking SEC hoops here, but if you were ever thinking about getting interested, this is the season to do it, because the SEC is absolutely loaded this year in hoops, and it's going to be a lot of fun watching these games as the season rolls along. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out throughout the week. Like I said, we'll have more football news throughout the week, getting you caught up and previewing that Texas Longhorns game. Longhorn fans, come on by, subscribe to Locked On SEC. Hey, for your second listening, check out Spencer McLaughlin with Locked On College Football. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.